We've got all the hot announcements coming out of New York City Comic-Con. Marvel's Daredevil is coming out so soon. Blade, however, has been pulled from the release slate. We get our first animated look at the new DCU, plus a bevy of other trailers. All that and more coming up right after this. Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for information about all your favorite fictional universes. My name is Matthew Carroll, and with me on the panel today we have Jay Sisson. What's up, buddy?
Hey, not too much. Great to be here. But I am wondering, what are we going to get first? Are we going to get Winds of Winter, GTA 6, or the Blade movie?
Oh, so sad. So sad. And J. Scotty St. Clair.
Hey there. Yeah, we got quite a doozy on our hands this week. It's what we call behind the scenes a 3-pager. So strap in. We got more news than you can shake a stick at this week.
We do indeed. And Haley Hobbs.
I am just very happy to be here along for this ride tonight because it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Before we did the show, everyone ASMR'd at me, and my brain feels weird. So this is going to be an interesting
But
journey.
the people in the chat are making me feel very powerful about it, so I might just branch out and start doing
Haley
this.
is feeling herself. She's, she's testing her powers.
Yeah, she's the ASMR queen, and I didn't realize how much it was my kryptonite, but she started doing it, and I started collapsing before the show. So we'll see if she uses it against me live on air.
Can't alienate people.
My brain is in your hands.
I am Cassandra Nova.
You are Cassandra Nova, exactly. Okay. We have our 5-star review for this week from S. Polzer. Says, love the podcast. It is by far the best part of my week. Keep up the good work. Anybody got any thoughts on the Rings of Power Season 2? Personally, I am loving it, and I don't think it deserves the hate it gets. Anyway, keep up the good work. P.S. Matt, you are my favorite. And that is where the 5-star review ends. Oh, sorry. P.S. Haley is my favorite. P.P.P.S. Jay is my favorite.
No,
I would just like to point out.
No,
I know.
They ran out of peas there in Canada. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I'd like to say. I feel like there's something going on here because the P.S. Matt is my favorite is spelled without the U, but then all the others are spelled with the U in favorite. So, like, I feel like there's some sort of shenanigans going on.
Like it's a robot?
No, I was thinking like someone added the favorites. Someone from across the pond or something.
Well,
I
they are
demand
from
a recount.
Canada, so I think that is how they spell favorite in Canada, as well as color.
Color with the U.
The U. But yeah.
Yeah.
How about it? How about Rings of Power Season 2? Anybody?
I've really enjoyed it.
I haven't started it yet. I really liked Rings of Power Season 1, but I just keep looking. Like, it's getting late at night. I'm busy. I'll pull it up. I'll be like, I'm going to watch episode 1. And then I see that it's 77 minutes long. And I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. It's just because I know it's a lot of dialogue. Like, I've heard it's a lot of dialogue at the beginning. So I'm going to get to it. I haven't gotten there yet. But I am excited to watch it. I did enjoy Season 1 a lot.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it all across the board. Like, I think it's been really good. I watched the 2 seasons kind of back to back. I didn't have a break between, so I didn't have I think some people felt like the first season was more action-packed and the second season was a little slower, but to me it felt like one good continuous story, so I've really enjoyed it, and it definitely ended with a bang. Lots of good action, and I'm starting to really feel for the characters in a big way instead of just like, hey, it's an elf. It's like, oh no, that's that elf that I love. I don't know. Really, really digging it.
We haven't finished it. We started the last episode, and it did pick up for me near the end of the season, but all in all, I just didn't connect with this season as much as last one, so not bad, just, I don't know, just something about it didn't click for me.
Hear that? And by the way, to S. Pulzer, favorite part of your week? That's huge. That's very kind of you to say. That's really sweet.
We're glad to be part of it.
Yeah, for real. That's very, very kind. Okay, let's get into the news. So much New York City Comic-Con news. We got to get moving. Between last weekend's New York City Comic-Con and the regular news cycle, this week has treated us to some tasty and maybe not so tasty Marvel morsels. The most substantial news impacting the MCU is the official March 4th, 2025 release date for Daredevil. Born Again, just a few months away on Disney Plus. And per an exclusive with Collider, the Russos confirmed Avengers Doomsday will begin filming next spring. Elsewhere, while speaking on the Rich Roll podcast, Tom Holland chimed in with his excitement after having read the script for his upcoming fourth Spider-Man film, saying that there were still things for the writers to figure out and work on, but that it is a real movie worthy of the fans' respect. And by the way, when I read this first, a real movie sounded like an insult, but the way he says it in the clip does not sound that way. It's like a real movie worthy of the fans' respect. It's all one phrase, just to be clear. Finally, today, Disney removed Blade, which was slated for November 7th, 2025, from its release calendar. A big week of news regarding red-clad Marvel heroes hailing from the Big Apple. Anything we can sink our teeth into?
Yeah, I mean, we knew the Blade thing was going to happen. There was no way it was going to make that release date. And this movie and this production is it's going to be studied someday as a case study in just when films go wrong. I mean, we remember clear as day when they brought Mahershala Ali on stage. They gave him the Blade hat. It was like the big reveal at the end of that panel. People were going crazy. And he took on this interesting kind of new role of a character. He was the one who pitched it to Feige. He had the Oscars behind him. You know, he was at the height of his powers in Hollywood, and with that came a certain degree of creative control that apparently has not been great for the production of the movie. There's seemingly, again, a lot of it's rumors and hearsay, but seemingly there just isn't a shared vision here between Mahershala Ali, between Kevin Feige. We've seen directors come and go. We've seen production start and then stop, and release dates get pushed around. And I don't know if we're getting this movie. I think we will eventually. I don't think it's dead. I mean, I think Feige really wants it, and I think Mahershala Ali really wants it. I mean, he's made that known that this is a character that he really wants to play and has always wanted to play, and was very excited to get into the mix on. But again, you know, he's got Jurassic World coming up. He's got other things, and the MCU as a whole has just taken us in a lot of different directions over the last few years. And so to see it all, we're going to see it all converge again with Avengers. And will we see Blade before then? I don't think so. I don't think there's room on the calendar for it. So then you have to start asking, all right, well then where does he fit, right? Like, where does this character fit in the grand scheme of things? If we're doing a multiversal war and we're bringing in Doctor Doom and we've got all this type of stuff, is there still an appetite for a Blade film, or have we missed our window? And it's a really interesting conversation, I think, here as to like what's happening behind the scenes, what could still happen. And again, I don't think it's necessarily doom and gloom when you look at it and you say, well, it's been removed from the calendar, because we ultimately always knew that was going to happen. There was not going to be enough time to shoot this movie between now and when it was potentially supposed to release. So we knew that was on the horizon. But still, it just frames it into reference as to like how troubled this production has been. And we're coming up on years and years since Mahershala Ali was brought in as Blade. And man, I don't know. I think we're looking probably post Avengers for this film if we're going to see it at all, which is sad on some level, but still is just it's one of those things that like until we can get people into the same room and get a shared vision together, it may not happen.
It reminds me that the Blade mishap of it all also connects to something else that Tom Holland said in the interview, which was issues with getting the Spider-Man 4 made because the bigger things that are going on in the MCU, and I'm assuming he's talking about Doomsday and Secret Wars, like the bigger things going on are going to make it really tough for them to fit their movie in at the right time. And it sounds like they're either trying to get it in before those movies or in between those movies, as has been discussed. He was saying how difficult that is. And it does make me wonder about the Blade movie. Like, they kind of hung their entire kind of horror, dark MCU stuff on this Blade movie by connecting it to Dane Whitman. And then also we all kind of thought maybe we'd see some Werewolf by Night connection in there. And then that's not going to be able to happen. So not only is it holding up the Blade movie, it seems like it's also holding up the character of Dane Whitman, like he's just not going to be able to show up probably because that's where he's planned for next. And so I've speculated in the past things like Shang-Chi, like I think they're waiting on these Avengers movies to happen so they can make another Shang-Chi movie. And it's like, it's just not going to be able to happen because they keep pushing things back. And it's just sort of a bummer that these big plans they had for phases 4 and 5 and 6 have seemed to, like, big chunks of them have gotten left behind or pushed back to the point that it feels not as relevant anymore. So yeah, I'm excited that they're really talking of Spider-Man 4, but it does concern me because he is talking about how like they've got some things to work out in the script and we have to hit a very specific window. And he was talking like it's doable, but it's like tight. And so like if they don't, I'm scared they're going to rush the Spider-Man 4. And I think they would rush Spider-Man 4 because that's a movie that Sony wants to make. They need to hold on to the rights, all kinds of other things. So does kind of concern me for Spider-Man 4.
Well, it should also be said, too, that Tom Holland, I mean, talking about creative control of the lead actor, Tom Holland's in that position now, too. He has finished his contract. He had a 6-movie contract with Sony and Marvel. He's done. So he does not have to come back for another movie if he does not want to. And he knows that. Sony knows that. Marvel knows that. So when they pitch a movie to him, if he doesn't like it, he has the power to be like, change this, this, and this, or I'm not doing it. And I think I'm not saying it's going to be Blade, but I think Tom Holland has that power now, and that is going to be a conversation that's going to be a part of it going forward.
Absolutely.
I'll start by addressing the devil in the kitchen, the one thing that hasn't been touched on so far. And I can't help but think, like, as we're talking about all of these adjustments and delays and kind of pivots, ever since we started the show, like, I think we started a couple months after Quantum Mania came out, and it's really felt like Marvel has kind of been in a very much of a adjustment phase, kind of figuring things out behind the scenes. So thinking about Daredevil, that's one of the projects that's had one of the biggest overhauls. So we talked about it on this show. Like they had a whole 20, 21, 22 episode show planned and were actively in production on it. And it came to a screeching halt and they said, hey, this isn't working. Let's pivot. Let's figure this out. So I think this is really going to be, we're going to get Brave New World before that. And with that in mind, looking at this release window of March 5th, it's kind of the perfect time to release it. It's sandwiched right in between Brave New World and the Thunderbolts there. And actually looking back on it, it's almost 10 years to the date when that first season of Daredevil came out on Netflix. Anybody feel old yet? But yeah, it was like April 2015 that first season came out. So yeah, we're almost 10 years removed from that.
Wow.
But Brave New World will come out first, so that'll be our real first taste of what, like, you know, something that's gone through some major overhauls looks like. But I am super encouraged and excited for Daredevil, and I have to imagine that a trailer's just around the corner here. So
yeah, as soon as this episode drops, it's exactly what'll happen.
Right.
I gotta say, like, that's so freaking exciting, Jay Sky, to lay it out that way, that we're gonna have February, Brave New World. Then we're going to have, you know, I'm assuming they're going to do weekly releases of Daredevil, which we've never gotten to cover Daredevil weekly. You know, I'm so pumped for that. Yeah. And then that's going to lead us directly into that May time period for the next movie. And that's just going to be such an exciting time for us Marvel fans.
Yeah, I think next year is going to be, I hope, the revival of the MCU, not just for us hardcore fans, but for, you know, reintroducing it to people or introducing it new to people. I think Daredevil will be a great gateway for people to enter the MCU because we know that they're trying to make the shows a little less connected to the overall story, but it'll still matter, you know, when it needs to matter. And who doesn't? I mean, Daredevil's iconic at this point. I think that Charlie Cox show on Netflix made an iconic character even more exalted and lauded around the world. Yeah. So I think when I look through these things, that's definitely the thing I'm really excited to see. I was so happy when they trimmed it back from the 19 episode count. I remember when they announced that and I was like, that is crazy. Don't do that. We don't do that anymore. I mean, that was unreachable. And I think that, like Blade, that episode count was a casualty of the overhaul that MCU has been doing since all the things that came out post-pandemic. So I'm really jazzed for that. The hype around it, I think, at the Comic-Con was really excited. And Spider-Man's the other thing that I'm kind of perked up because I was like, oh, cool, this is like actually going to happen. Like for real. But how is it going to happen in this short time frame is going to be interesting. I personally like that Tom Holland's getting to kind of be involved a little more. I think he still has a lot of buy-in for that character, and I think that even though he could be done, there's still more to tell. And I want to see him and Zendaya back on the screen together. So cute.
Well, that's the other big thing he said in the interview was that I feel like he's so bad at leaking things. He's so bad about it. But one of the things he said was him and Zendaya were reading the script together. Yeah. Which means she's a part of the script, and I'm assuming their story is a big part of the script. So, like, yeah, that's interesting little tidbit that came out in that interview.
Yeah, I'm glad we brought it back to Tom Holland and Spider-Man, because I did want to say, like, I love Tom Holland. I think he's great. He's probably overall my favorite Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man Homecoming is my favorite of all the Spider-Man films. But that being said, like, his comments, I'm glad you provided the context of having seen the clip there, Matt, because I did not watch the clip. I just read the comments, and I will be honest, there was a little bit of like, it's a real movie. What does that even mean?
It's a real movie? Like, the way it was written in the quote did not serve justice. It was just the way it came out of his mouth. It's a real movie worth the blah blah blah. You know, like, he said it all.
I mean, he's the
emphasis was on movie, not real.
Yeah. So he's an actor talking about his leading vehicle. Of course, he's going to be effusive and talking positively about it. So the comments didn't hold that much weight for me. But my real takeaway was, like, the fast tracking for this film that we've talked about, and him talking about how the writers really are kind of like in a fever pitch to get this thing right. And I just come away from it really getting the sense that, I don't know if we have an official release date for it, but it feels like it's going to fall in between Doomsday and Secret Wars, which makes a lot of sense, like, knowing that it's going to be a multiversal story. We're going to have, our Peter Parker, who arguably has the strongest relationship with Tony Stark, who will emerge as Doom in Doomsday. And then, that makes a lot of sense to set Peter Parker up for a multiversal story, kind of like, if there's a Tony Stark variant, what other variants are out there? And let me go, find some people to help fight this fight.
Well, I think his comments highlight something we've talked about for over a year at this point, which is that making Spider-Man 4 is a challenge, because you do have a lot of parties that you have to satisfy. You've got a whole Marvel universe. He was left in a place where nobody in the Marvel universe knows who he is. Then you've got the whole Sony-verse that's happened, and we've seen these other Spider-Men come across the multiverse to join him, and what happened to them. And there's this obvious want to connect him to Venom and connect him to all these other things. Sure. And then you've got the wider MCU of it all. You've got these multiversal threats, and it's just, you can't really have Tom Holland Spider-Man swinging around, stopping bank robbers in between Secret Wars and Avengers Doomsday. It doesn't make sense. It has to connect to those stories, I think, in a way, because they're so big, and we would presumably have a connective tissue between those two Avengers films, like we did in Infinity War and Endgame, where one led into the other. So I think his comments of saying there's just the hard thing about making this movie is there's just the wider picture. He's highlighting something that I think is very obvious here, and that you can look at it and say, okay, well, that means this movie's going to fail. But I think he's just trying to say, well, look, there's just a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this thing, and there's a lot of storylines, and we really have to get on the same page about what we want this movie to be. And so there's work to be done. Right. And when you see the headline, it's like Tom Holland says script still needs work. I don't think he's dogging on it. I think he's just pointing out the obvious, which is, how do we do this? Do it right. Make something that works for the character, still satisfies all parties, keeps dad happy in one room and dad happy in the other room, Sony and Marvel, and everybody's happy, right? And how do we just move this thing forward with a story that makes sense, though? It doesn't just feel like a third Avengers film or whatever. So there's a lot at play here. But I will say, just to give him some credit, he did mention that also he did keep the Downey coming back as Doom thing secret. He knew about that before we knew, and he did not leak that. So you got to give Tom Holland a little bit of credit.
They locked him in a dark room, and you can't convince me otherwise.
I think he said he intentionally avoided doing press just so there wouldn't be a possibility of that happening.
I think the direct quote was like, "I can't believe I kept it secret either," or something like that. Like he was just a surprise.
In a way, they've left, like, yes, all those things you said are true, Jay, but by making it so that nobody knows who Peter Parker is, they have left themselves some room to play there, I think, to plug him in. I think the important thing with Spider-Man is you always have to keep the heart of the story, because that's what Spider-Man's thing is. And so to me, that would be harder now with the multiverse stuff than it was before, when everybody knew who he was. So it's interesting.
Speaking of, I always talk about Marvel and about Daredevil particularly made me think about She-Hulk, and that reminded me. Megan Lakowski, I think, posted it in the Stranded Panda chat this week. She posted Comedy Bang Bang episode this week. Had the last episode of Comedy Bang Bang had Tatiana Maslany on, and it was just a lot of fun. I don't know if you guys, if anybody out there listens to Comedy Bang Bang, it's kind of a weird podcast if you don't know anything about it, because it's an improv podcast. So they literally like yes and everything, and so they were like making up weird stories about She-Hulk and stuff. So it's not really like an interview, but it is a lot of fun to hear her like talking about She-Hulk, and she sort of like makes up a little thing about how she's like, oh yeah, I'm suing Disney because it's really smart to sue Disney. Like there's all these, because there's rumors about it in the world that her and Disney are fighting about Deadpool and Wolverine, and she's kind of like trying to dispel those in this improv scene, but it's sort of confusing if you don't know the podcast. But it's really good. It's funny.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that provides some context to some headlines I saw but didn't have the opportunity to properly vet, and they were saying that Tatiana Maslany was joking about suing Disney for cutting She-Hulk from Deadpool and Wolverine. So apparently that sounds like it was a joke. As awesome as and appropriate it would be to have your fourth wall breaking character meet up with your other fourth wall breaking character. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. And based on the way she's joking in the thing, it almost sounds like none of it is true. Like her ever being in Deadpool. Yeah. It seemed like it's just like it was all like people on the internet saying these things have happened, and she's like, yeah, none of that's real, you know. But it's weird because it's an improv scene where she's basically saying it's all real, and it's confusing, but it's very good. It's very funny. That show's always really funny. And then the back half of the show is a lady from Marvel, like an executive from Marvel, comes in to talk, and it's like a whole it's very funny. Okay, let's move on. Taking a hard left turn, let's talk some DC, where James Gunn debuted the official trailer for Creature Commandos during the Comic-Con panel. Cast and crew, including Gunn, executive producer Dean Lorey, and Alan Tudyk, to name a few, highlighted the animated series' mature, violent tone and Eastern European aesthetic, even comparing it to the TV show Lost, and cited how voices were cast with live action appearances and integration specifically considered, while celebrating the series' unique identity in the context of the new DCU. Gunn, of course, couldn't miss the opportunity to provide minor updates for Peacemaker Season 2, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, Lanterns, and Superman, promising it won't be too long before we see a trailer. But it also won't be too soon. Shut up, James Gunn.
So that literally tells us nothing.
Exactly. It will be a medium before you see a trailer.
It'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Just not on a Wednesday, please.
Beat Daredevil to the punch, yeah. Given the seeming breadth and scope of this universe while still in its infancy, based on these updates, do we dare dally with DC?
I dare dally. I'll dally with DC a little bit. This is really Creature Commandos' moment to shine, and DC's moment to shine. A lot of times when we talk about Comic-Con events, more so San Diego Comic-Con than New York Comic-Con, we talk about who won Comic-Con. Was it DC? Was it Marvel? Was it Marvel by way of Sony? I don't think that's ever happened. But,
that was very charitable of you, Scotty.
Very true. But in this case, I will say I think DC did win in terms of actually capitalizing on the event. Yeah, we just talked about some exciting stuff coming out of Marvel, but in terms of like leveraging the opportunity to debut a trailer and get people excited, I thought this was great. I thought it was a fantastic trailer for Creatures Commandos. I always do that. I want to say Creatures Commandos, but it's Creature Commandos. It's tough to say for some reason. And I've been excited for the series all along the way, but I will say this trailer did the most to excite me. I like I said, it was a fantastic trailer. The use of the music from the animals, Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, I thought was perfect. In terms of this like Eastern European aesthetic that we're talking about, I was really reminded of the 2005 Guillermo del Toro Hellboy, and I mean that in a good way, where it's kind of differentiating itself from the Suicide Squad iterations that we've seen in the past. We've seen so many of these, ragtag teams kind of put up on the chopping block. This really did feel unique and kind of relishing in that more supernatural kind of creepy, kooky kind of vibe. So That being said, I was surprised that the standout character for me was G.I. Robot. Sean Gunn voicing the character of G.I. Robot. That's the character that I'm the most excited for. But again, focusing in on the fact that they said all of these people were cast with the intention or the consideration that they may make the transition to live action appearances, I find that even more incredibly exciting. And I think a lot of people might be counting Creature Commandos out. Like, we're talking about the start of the DCU, and everybody wants to look at Superman as the start of the DCU, but we're going to get Creature Commandos first. That's coming out in December. And then Peacemaker season 2, I don't know if we have an official release for that. I think we've just been told early 2025, summer 2025. So it may come out right before Superman, maybe right after Superman, maybe around the same time there. But again, with the character of Rick Flag Sr. here being voiced by Frank Grillo, we know he's going to be popping up there. We know he's going to be here. So while people are waiting for Superman to start the DCU, I think those that are, invested in the TV stuff, we're going to be already enjoying it and relishing it and getting an idea of what to expect here. So, moving on to a couple of other things here. I was actually surprised that of all the things that we got updates on, the one thing that we didn't hear anything about was the Wonder Woman series, the Themyscira series, Paradise Lost. So I think it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, James, went on record and said, even though you're not hearing updates or things about these series, all of the series or projects that have been announced are, still on the table. So last thing here is, Jay, you said, we don't have any idea about when to, expect this trailer based on James Gunn's comments. And I do agree with you. He's not being very specific, but I would be very surprised if we don't see it before the end of the year. It probably wants to attach itself to some, holiday heavy hitters like Wicked and Gladiator 2. If not that, Sonic 3 and Mufasa. So, like we said, just don't do it on a Wednesday, please.
DC was very notably absent from San Diego Comic-Con, so they definitely wanted to take more of the stage here in New York, and I think that's kind of nice that we had Marvel in San Diego and DC being more New York. It's that way they're not having to compete on those kinds of stages at that level. And I think you're right. I think Superman trailer before the end of the year for sure, because why would you even say that if you weren't going to drop it before the end of 2024?
Sure.
And I think he's just so excited about that project that he's going to do. He's not going to be able to help himself. He's got that itchy little trigger finger on Instagram. He cannot help himself. All in the game in the chat says he's sometimes a little too online. I've been saying that from the get-go.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
for sure.
But I love that they had a lot of time to shine. We're talking about doing some comics for Creature Commandos on source pages because that trailer was really exciting. And the idea of characters jumping from animation to live action is really fun. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but on a grand scale. I love that.
Well, I'm assuming they said they cast them with the intent of being able to cross over. I'm assuming they will be live action when they come to the live action properties.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, the world's kind of mix. It's fun.
Right. Yeah, mixing it all together.
James will do what James will do.
Indeed.
I don't know, that Robin series, kind of gave off some, or that Robin movie or whatever. What it was puppets and all kinds of other stuff.
It's called Momo animation. Educate yourself, Jay.
I'm learning on the fly here.
The biggest thing that stood out to me, a few weeks ago, we reported that Alan Tudyk had been cast on Peacemaker season 2, and we had talked about
Superman.
how
Superman is what he's going to pop.
Oh, was it Superman?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I could have sworn someone was casting. Anyway, someone from Creature Commandos was going on Peacemaker season 2 because we talked about the possibility. Oh, was it Frank Grillo? Okay, yes. So that's maybe what I'm thinking of. But that makes me think that the crossover is going to be between Creature Commandos and that to me, this universe that we saw in this reminded me a lot of. Literally some of the same shots from Suicide Squad. The DCEU version, and I'm really curious if they're using Creature Commandos to shift the universes, and they're going to do some meta stuff with these smaller properties in the beginning to kind of give us extra geeks a way to connect the universes, and then to everyone else, Superman will be the first big property that's just clean and in the new universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, James Gunn was very specific too, because he was asked about tone. The Creature Commandos tone is a lot more violent and a lot more, like you said, Eastern European, which like I love that description for it. But that idea of it's got a very certain aesthetic. And he was asked, does this sort of share an aesthetic with Superman? Because everything we've seen about Superman is that it's a little brighter. It's got a little bit more of maybe a little like a kind of a different vibe. And he was very clear that like these projects are all developed as very different things. Like we are not aiming for, yes, it's connected, but we are not aiming for an overall aesthetic. We do not expect these movies and shows to share an aesthetic and to kind of give off the same tone, which, you know, Marvel has sort of given off a similar tone across their films. And I think that's part of their success. But again, we've seen Marvel kind of experiment with that a little bit to varying levels of success in recent years with playing with their genres and things like that. But really, I'm not even really focusing on Marvel. I'm thinking more about the Snyderverse and how all of those films in the Snyderverse had a very certain aesthetic, right? I mean, you turn on Superman or Man of Steel, you turn on the Justice League, you turn on Wonder Woman. You know, all these movies have a like Aquaman, like all of them, they were made with that in mind. They wanted to have the shared universe, but they wanted to have a shared aesthetic. The idea was that you could go from movie to movie and it was a very similar tone. But he was very apt to say, you know, didn't point fingers or name names, but he was very like clear, like Lanterns is going to be extremely different than Superman, and Superman is going to be extremely different than Creature Commandos, and Creature Commandos is going to be very different than Supergirl, and we're just letting these tones take their own paths, which I think is good. I mean, we want DC to differentiate itself. We want, and we know James Gunn, he might, you know, post a little bit too much online, but he is very good at empowering creators. I mean, we've seen that with him before, is he does take creative. It does seem to give creative control to the right people. So I really focused in on that quote when I saw the main quotes that he brought out, was that idea of like, look, we're not telling people, we're not telling the guys at Lanterns they got to make this more like Superman or vice versa. Like we're letting people make the things they want to make. They have a shared universe, but we are not beholden to a certain vision.
Yeah. I'm glad you honed in on that, Jay, because I do think it is important. And in the vein of DC differentiating itself even from its existing stable of properties there, going back to Creature Commandos, like we're talking about this more mature and violent tone. DC is actually no stranger to, like, you know, more mature animation. They've had a lot of success with series like Harley Quinn and stuff like that. But this is very different from something like that, whereas that's like a show that you would expect to see on Adult Swim or something like that. Lots of crude humor. I'm sure there will be tons of crude humor here as well, but just the presentation is just entirely different.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we'll move on to our next big story here. We got HBO's Dune Prophecy treated fans with a new trailer and an official release date coming out of NYCC. The series will premiere Sunday, November 17th. The official logline for the series reads, "From the expansive universe of Dune, created by acclaimed author Frank Herbert, and 10,000 years before the ascension of Paul Atreides, Dune Prophecy follows two Harkonnen sisters as they combat forces that threaten the future of humankind and establish the fabled sect that will become known as the Bene Gesserit." This season is made up of 6 episodes and will release on Sundays on HBO and Max. Given it's the best look we've had at the prequel series so far, did this trailer do enough to worm its way into our desires?
I get it. It's funny. Worm. I thought this trailer rocked. I was not super sold on this series when we got that teaser because it just didn't, it didn't give us a lot because it was a teaser trailer. But this trailer looks awesome. I did read the source material that the show will be based on, and they've flipped the time frames. The book takes place like after the Dune, we kind of know, and they're doing it way before. So that's interesting, but I'm excited to see how they handle some of the big mysteries and the big twists that will come and how that will inform people's feelings on the other Dune movies. They do want this in the same universe, so that's kind of a tall order when you're going up against Denis Villeneuve's movies that were really beautiful and really well done. But aesthetically, we're just talking about aesthetics, this looks on par. HBO looks like they've pumped a lot into the show money-wise, and it looks great. The music was killer in this trailer. Like, I don't always notice trailer music, but this was awesome, and I'm really looking forward to it. And so Ashley and I are going to cover it. Ashley Coffin and I will cover it on Always Watching, because we are the Reverend Mothers of the Bene Gesserit.
Well, they're doing the Game of Thrones thing, which is cool, right? Is you're taking a franchise that is there and it exists and there's fans of it, but you're saying, if we dance around it, if we do the Star Wars thing and we're like building around that timeline, then we're just beholden to a lot. Like, we have to tell certain stories, there's certain things we can't do, there's certain characters that are doing things in the universe at the same time that muddy the waters, and it just kind of becomes this whole thing that you have to play in. You've really like limited your sandbox, no pun intended, with that. But now, if you go backwards, we're talking 10,000 years, you said. So I mean, we're going way back. It just gives you the ability to, you have the canvas, like it's already laid out. You have the world of Dune, but you can really tell your own story. I mean, you can tell whatever story you want in that vein. You can introduce new characters. You can sort of do kind of like what we talked a lot about when we were building up to the Acolyte. We talked a lot about how the Acolyte had a lot of potential because it had that, right? It was Star Wars, right? It's got the pull of Star Wars, but it's such a distant prequel that you can really play around with the stories that you want to tell. So I'm with you. The teaser trailer did not move the needle for me, but this one did. You can see the action, you can see the budget, and that's what this show needs, I think.
There are three types of Dune fans: those that pronounce it Harkonnen, those that pronounce it Harkonnen, and those that vacillate back and forth. And I am in the third camp there. So it'll be interesting to see what the characters of this show, how they choose to pronounce that last name that has been much debated. But yeah, I hate to play a broken record here, but I'm right there with both of you as well. The first trailer I liked. I'm certainly interested and invested in the world of Dune, but didn't knock my socks off. But this trailer, like Creature Commandos, really got my attention and kind of got me on the edge of my seat. There were still a couple of shots where the lighting looked a little flat. But I can tell
Paul
that
Atreides look-alike, was that a problem for you?
But it's okay. I can see where they're investing that budget, because to your point, they really are doing a great job of capturing that aesthetic that Denis Villeneuve established, which is not an easy task. You look at the budget for those films there. So other than that, my only real takeaway is like Max is doing stand-up work in terms of like staying relevant, in terms of being in my queue as far as like go-to streaming apps go, because watching The Penguin every week right now, by the time that wraps up, it'll be perfect timing to hop into Dune for that November 15th release date. So yeah, looking forward to yours and Ashley's coverage there. Haley, I know you'll do the sisterhood justice.
Oh, we will. And it's going to be, Game of Thrones, House of Dragon is a very apt comparison, because it's going to, without spoiling things, you're going to talk a lot about fallacy and power and like the struggle and the lies that get told to maintain power and stuff like that. I mean, it's just going to be really that kind of captivating struggle that we love from those kinds of shows. So I'm so excited.
That's exciting. And yeah, if you want to follow our coverage of that, please check out Always Watching feed and subscribe. We're me, Jay, and Jay Scotty are currently covering with Zuhair Ali are covering Penguin, and it's just lots of fun over there. I feel like there's lots of really great TV shows coming out, and we've been trying to keep that feed busy. So check it out.
Only women covering The School for Young Girls, though. Sorry.
Fair enough. To address the chat here, All in the Game is noting how Mark Strong has seemingly joined that same family that Jeffrey Wright seems to be a part of, where HBO and Max are going to pay for their children's entire education.
Is that a spoiler for this week's Penguin? Haven't seen it.
I don't know for a fact that he's in the show. Just postulation.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
But he is going to be in The Last of Us season 2. So.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay.
That is confirmed.
All right. Well, moving on. Haley, you wanted to bring us some comics news from New York City Comic Con?
Let me get my notes here. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I won't spend too much time on the publishing news from New York Comic Con, but just hitting some highlights from Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. Marvel is going to launch in January 2025 an Ultimate Wolverine line written by Chris Condon and drawn by Alessandro Capuccio. And then some people may have seen, especially if you were there, and we talked about it from San Diego Comic-Con, but there's going to be a big Doom takeover of Marvel Comics next year starting in February. And so that'll be like this big overarching event that will weave into different characters' comics and stuff like that. It starts with the rise of Emperor Doom. So looking forward to that. If you are a Daredevil fan and you like those comics, Charles Soule and Steve McNiven are going to reunite for Daredevil Cold Day in Hell, a new limited series launching in April of 25. And then writer Mackenzie Caden had announced a 5-issue limited series called Doom Academy, which will launch in February as a tie-in to the One World Under Doom. So just a little taste of all the fun things going on at Marvel. There were a lot more things, but, we've got limited time here, folks.
Well, it sounds like they're really doubling down on Doom.
Yeah. Oh, so much Doom. Doom riding a dinosaur. Like, it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think DC actually had the most exciting publishing news, starting with Batman Hush, which is a really popular run that Jeff Loeb did back in the day. And there is, I think, an animated film on Max that they did of this one. It's going to get a sequel produced by the original creators. So DC publisher and CCO Jim Lee confirmed that he and Jeff Loeb are partnering on this follow-up. The biggest news from DC is that they are reviving their Vertigo Comics brand imprint. So Vertigo used to be their mature line of comics, the really adult stuff. Its most famous title is probably The Sandman, which I think we've all heard of, maybe. And they shut it down in 2020, and DC Black Label became that mature readers line that the publisher supported. The new Vertigo line is going to be devoted to publishing creator-owned comic books and graphic novels set outside of the DC multiverse. I think this is cool. I've supported some stuff on Kickstarter, and that's where a lot of those creator-owned things are trying to get legs a lot of the time now. So this is really neat that they're bringing Vertigo back and putting it under this banner with a really clear mission that will be important to these creator-owned comics. And then speaking of Peacemaker, Season 2 is still in the works for 2025, but DC is going to do a comic special that'll fill in the gaps between Series 1 and 2 called Peacemaker Presents the Vigilante/Eagly Double Feature, and will detail the misadventures of Vigilante and Eagly in separate stories.
Oh, that's fun.
And I miss that. Marvel used to do that with their films, and I miss those. They really need to bring those back.
Yeah, the tie-ins are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And they always give a little more context, and you never really know if it's canon or not.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
They are at the moment, but then they're not beholden to it in the future, It's yeah.
Just real quick, Star Wars. There were a ton of comics things from Star Wars. I will not list all of them. Go to their website if you want to know. Notably, for those fans of The Bad Batch, they're going to do a limited series of The Bad Batch where Tech lives, because it's set for the events of the show. Dark Horse Comics is releasing that. I'm definitely going to have to spring for that on Kindle.
Definitely.
I think it's a 4-issue run, if I remember correctly. I know. Justice for Tech, finally, Scotty. Lots and lots of news from the High Republic, including their comics, some of their young people books that they do. The third phase junior reader novel will be called A Valiant Vow by Justina Ireland, and the young adult novel is going to be called Into the Light by Claudia Gray, and that mirrors her Into the Dark young adult novel from phase 1. Just a reminder, this is the last phase of the High Republic, so if you want to get in, there's no time like the present. And then we talked from San Diego about some Acolyte novels. The one focusing on Jecki and Yord will be called The Acolyte, The Crystal Crown, which sounds like an Indiana Jones adventure to me. And then kind of lastly here, there's going to be a comic exploration by Mark Guggenheim called Jedi Knights, focusing on, you've got it, the Jedi Knights of the prequel era. So think Yoda, Qui-Gon Jinn, Mace Windu, and more.
Very
That's
cool.
all I've got.
Yeah.
Love it. Thanks, Haley.
The name Claudia Gray stuck out to me. She's done a number of Star Wars books, hasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's been.
Yeah, one of my
Okay.
favorites called Bloodline, which is about Leia, is one that she did. She's done a ton in the High Republic. So yeah, she's all in on Star Wars. She's a good writer.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Haley. So much of the source material for the stuff we love is over there in the comics, and so it's interesting now, and I feel like a lot of the stuff they're writing now is going to be source material for the stuff in 5 years. I mean, Miss Marvel's the one I always think of. Like, she's as a character not very long in comics. It's like 2005 or something. Is it 2015? Oh man! And now she's on the big screen.
The people will tell me if I'm wrong. So
I think that sounds right. I knew it had a 5 at the end, and I was gonna say 2005 because 15 sounds insane, but I think you're right.
I just read all of her runs, and I'm pretty sure it starts in 2014 or 15.
Man, it's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, it's interesting that it's almost like the comics are catching up. So it's kind of crazy. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break. We got so much more news for the lightning round this week, so stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Multiverse News. And you guys, we're about to get into the lightning round Spotify poll, but I'd like to tell you first about our Patreon. Patreon.com/Multiverse Newscast. It is where you go to support the show. It's $4 a month. It's like $1 per episode. You just give us a little tip for the work we put in and bringing you all this news every week. And we hope you enjoy the show, and we hope you're willing to support it if you do. Patreon.com/Multiverse Newscast. We'll be over there doing polls and extra content sometimes and all kinds of stuff. So check that out. And let's get into the Spotify poll. Which DC project is most exciting to you? I feel so bad for this. Creature Commandos with 0 votes.
Aww.
Well, it was before the trailer. It was before the trailer. You know,
it's true.
It's true. I had to be honest. I am excited for Creature Commandos, but I voted for Lanterns. Had Peacemaker season 2 been on the poll, I might have been swayed to vote for that. But
yeah, I was putting like new projects. I knew that
fair.
Have Peacemaker already having a season. Someone else commented that they were like, I wanted to vote for Peacemaker season 2, but I just included new projects. But I probably should have included Peacemaker season 2 because that would have definitely changed the voting. Supergirl got 5%. The Batman 2 got 26%. I don't know. That one's moving up in my estimation since the Penguin has been killing it. Lanterns got 27%, and Superman got a whopping 42%, with a pretty resounding victory for Superman.
I was a Lanterns vote as well.
Nice.
I knew Superman would carry it. Give one up for the little guy.
It is the one we've heard a lot about, though. Lanterns has a 2026 release date, so that bears repeating. We are still quite a while away.
There's a lot of interest in it, then.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, with for all the casting and stuff, and the creative force behind it, and to already be talking about it 2 years from it actually coming out. I mean, it shows that that's going to be a long runway for that series. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's dive into the lightning round. And oh man, this is going to be quite a lightning round because there's so much news. She's a big
one. The show is already so long. So we're going to try to make this a real lightning round, which is where I'm going to read a story, and we each get to claim that story by shouting out our name like it's a buzzer, and we get to comment on the story we claimed, and once per lightning round, you get a rebuttal. So here we go. Netflix has released the official trailer for the Russo brothers' upcoming sci-fi action movie, The Electric State, starring Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt. The film begins streaming on March 14th, 2025.
Jay, do you think Netflix and Millie Bobby Brown, do you think that they just have her PayPal or something? I mean, she's in everything on Netflix. That's their queen of every movie and series. She got that Stranger Things train rolling. But this trailer was really surprising to me because I didn't really know what to expect. We had heard about this movie. We know the Russos. We've talked about it before. The Russos have not had what you would call incredible success since Avengers Endgame in the movies that they've directed. And so you just really don't know totally what to expect from them from a non-Marvel thing. But overall, I thought this was a good trailer. I thought it worked. I think the pairing of Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown, you tell me that on the surface and I'm kind of like, yeah. But I think just based on what we've seen, this limited look, it does work. So I think this is a trailer worth checking out. If you missed this one, maybe go back and watch it. But I think it does seem like a little bit more of what the Russos are good at. It's going to lean a little bit more into that. And I think that makes it one to watch for sure.
Shrinking has been renewed for season 3 on Apple TV Plus.
Haley,
Matt.
I haven't. Okay, have you gotten to watch any of the new season yet?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't. So you talk about it.
No, it's just great. It's really good. Has been solid all through season 1, and now there's only 2 episodes out, I believe, for season 2, and both are great. They really are taking the characters deeper. They're doing what the show does well, which is dive very deep into sort of character development and character building and like real kind of serious stuff with the main character and his daughter and the people around them, but also keeping it really light and fun at the same time. So I've just really loved the show and can't wait to see what happens. I actually found myself for maybe the first time ever wishing this was a binge show. This morning we were like, hey, how about we watch the next episode of Shrinking? And I was like, what? Weekly release? Who does that?
Everybody.
I know, and like I'm the biggest proponent for weekly release, but I think with a show like Shrinking, I'm like, I'm not talking about this on a podcast. I just want to enjoy the little like place it puts me. It's wonderful. All right. Josh Brolin and Lee Pace are currently in final negotiations to star opposite Glenn Powell in The Running Man, Paramount's adaptation of the Stephen King novel. Both actors will portray villains in the film.
Scotty, so Thanos and Ronan the Accuser together in this thing?
Yeah, it's a little on the nose.
But I've discovered as this film has added more people to its cast and we've learned a little bit more about it, I've learned that I did not know that much about The Running Man. Apparently, it's had an adaptation that came out in the 80s, and when I heard The Running Man, I just imagined Glenn Powell having to run without stopping, but I guess it's based on like him being on some kind of like game show with really high stakes and stuff like that. So I'm curious.
There's a clock. Yeah.
Is it Josh Brolin that's going to be the game show host, or is it going to be Lee Pace? I think I see Lee Pace having that energy a little bit more so, but we'll see.
Amazon MGM Studios is reportedly casting new leads in their 20s for Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2, with singer Billie Eilish among rumored contenders for the one-year role of John and Jane. Matt, mostly I just like the way this was written because it sounds like Billie Eilish is going to play John and Jane. But I loved Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 1. Really great. Just great. I'm actually sort of upset that they're not continuing the story of those characters. But that has become like kind of a thing lately. I think it kind of started, Fargo does it. Probably True Detective was one of the pioneers of this, sort of like the anthology series that it doesn't have to have a certain kind, it doesn't have to have that wraparound, but like season long anthology episodic kind of stuff. I really love that. I think it's really interesting and changing out all the actors. And I think it could be, the cynical thing would be to say that Billie Eilish, like why? Because I don't know that she's acted in anything. But they kind of had weird choices for the actor and actress Childish Gambino or Donald Glover playing in that role was really interesting because I think it was more serious than stuff he had done. And then, Atlanta has its serious moments, but this was like very, very just straightforward. And then the actress who played in it, I only knew her from Pen 15, and it was just a totally different tone. So I think taking a gamble on somebody could be interesting. And singers are actors. Like a really good singer gets on stage and every night they're doing a one-man show, really. Like they're experiencing their songs, and like she's great at that. So she knows how to emote. I think that a lot of times when singers transfer to acting, they can actually really do a good job. So I'm pumped for that. At New York Comic-Con, AMC released the first trailer for Season 2 of Walking Dead: Dead City and announced that it will begin streaming sometime in the spring of 2025. And I guess I'm going to call this one too. I don't think anyone else has watched it. Matt! Sorry. A lot of them for me tonight. I try to like always pause, but I know that a lot of these are just for me. The Season 1 was cool. I did not know if it'd get a Season 2. I feel like The Walking Dead, I never hear anyone talking about it, ever. And so I feel like it's got to run out of steam. And they have like taken the one show and split it off into 6 different spinoffs now. And it's all the characters that have been around since like Season 2 of The Walking Dead. So these people have been playing these characters like 12 years. And it's just a really long time. And it just seems like it's going to run out of steam. But it's not. They're making a Season 2, and I'm actually excited about it. Season 1 was cool and left off in a cool place. And it's kind of neat to have these different, kind of like we talked about with DC having these different tones. Dead City's tone is very different from the tone of Those Who Live, I think it's called. The Ones Who Live.
Yeah.
And that's very different from the tone of the Daryl Dixon show. Which is very different from the tone of Fear the Walking Dead. I mean, they all have the same post-apocalyptic environment, but they do have different tones. And I'm pumped for seeing more of this particular tone. All right. Blumhouse showcased exclusive Megan 2 footage with the killer doll teasing she's received an upgrade in a special NYCC message. With production complete, the sequel is set to release on June 27th, 2025. And I'm not going to claim this one.
Scotty. Yeah, in terms of the footage, don't really know what was shown. Haven't gone out of my way to try and find descriptions of the footage, but that's okay. I don't mind being, treated when I get to see the thing in the theaters. But looking at the release date, I'm curious about that because the last one released in January, and that was the perfect time for it. January typically doesn't have a lot of movies that people are going out in droves to see, but horror, there are horror films that have done very well in the summer as well, specifically right around that 4th of July holiday. So late June could be a win for it, but it does dash my hopes a little bit. This upgrade that she's talking about, I don't think it's an R rating because with the counter programming, I suspect is at play there. They're probably going to try and get the teenage audience that's not going to see the blockbusters around that time. So I'll still check it out.
Blumhouse also unveiled a new trailer for Lee Whannell's The Wolfman, starring Julia Garner and Christopher Abbott.
Scotty, just continues to look pretty good. Every time I talk about this one, I keep being reminded of the fact that Lee Whannell's previous effort, The Invisible Man, was such an unexpected hit and had a lot more gravity and heft to it than I expected. And everything that I'm seeing from this film, again, just with the Wolfman, the threat to the family coming from inside the house, just has a lot of overtones of domestic violence. So I think it's going to be a horror movie with some scares, but also something to say.
Also during Blumhouse NYCC panel, Mike Flanagan spoke about his new version of The Exorcist, which he considers the scariest movie ever made. Beyond Flanagan expressing his excitement to tackle the iconic property, no additional details about the project were revealed at the NYCC panel. Matt?
Okay.
I think calling your own movie that you're putting out the scariest movie ever made, leave that to the marketing department. I don't know, that feels too big.
I interpreted that as he meant the original one was the scariest
I
movie.
think that's what he meant. Yeah, I think he was saying the original Exorcist was the scariest movie ever made, and he's kind of being like, it's going to be hard to follow that.
Gotcha. But I will say, if anyone, that makes me feel a lot better. I was reading it the way we wrote it up. I feel like it. Yeah, I sorry about that. If that's the case, great. I like Mike Flanagan's work a lot. Midnight Mass is one of my favorite shows. Period. Definitely one of my favorite horror shows. I think Midnight Mass is just amazing and totally locks me in. And so I am really, really down for another thing from Mike Flanagan. And if anyone can kind of marry that tone, that the original Exorcist is about the exorcist. It's about that character's journey through religion and dealing with coming face to face with this creature inside this girl, and that feels his combination of religion and horror in Midnight Mass, and his clear understanding of sort of the weight that religion puts on you and stuff, I think is really great for someone to tackle an Exorcist remake if someone's gonna do it.
Scotty with a tiny butt, I am reminded of the fact that Mike Flanagan, he did a follow-up, a sequel to my favorite horror movie of all time, The Shining, in Doctor Sleep, and I really like that movie. If you haven't seen that movie, I recommend it. I even like the director's cut. So again, The Exorcist is not my personal favorite horror movie of all time, but that it has such a reputation that Mike Flanagan seems like responsible hands to put this follow up into.
Absolutely. Following the success of the original film, director Scott Derrickson and writer C. Robert Cargill are returning for The Black Phone 2, bringing back Ethan Hawke and the original cast for what Derrickson describes as a high school coming-of-age film based on an idea from author Joe Hill. The sequel, currently in pre-production in Toronto, is set to release on October 17th, 2025.
Scotty, I probably, when I was making the outline, I probably should have divvied up some of this, separated some of this Blumhouse stuff, but there was just an article that had all of the updates from Blumhouse, so that's kind of how it happened here. But this one actually surprises me. I saw The Black Phone and enjoyed it. I think the big takeaway for me was how much of it, how well it captured the aesthetic, the 70s setting that it was going for. I did not anticipate getting a sequel based on what transpired in that film, but based on that, I suspect that the film will be a little bit different. Not only this high school coming of age, but just the nature of the villain. The first time around, he was, a person abducting children. I suspect that this one will incorporate more of the supernatural elements that the first film did have, but they were more centered around the children victim rather than the antagonist, who is Ethan Hawke. But we'll see.
Luca Guadagnino is in final negotiations to direct a new film adaptation of author Bret Easton Ellis's 1991 novel American Psycho. This upcoming film will not be a continuation, sequel, or remake of the original Christian Bale film that debuted in 2000, but will rather be a fresh vision.
Jay, I'm not always on board for a reimagining, but I actually think this one is a really good idea because the world that we live in has changed since the first American Psycho was created. It was supposed to be kind of a commentary in a way on business and Wall Street, kind of high level type stuff. Like that was really baked into the idea of that movie. And the violence in the movie was toned down a little bit from the book. If you've seen the book or read parts of the book is a little bit more extreme in its violence than what we saw out of the Christian Bale film. And so the Christian Bale film has gained steam over the years. I mean, you've seen the memes, it's still like a relevant part of our culture, and people go back and they find it and discover it. And so the name recognition is there. So I think this is a good idea. And then when you're talking about a director choice, you're talking Luca Guadagnino. He directed Challengers, right? And so to me, when I'm thinking about Challengers and the plot and the kind of he's very much known for his eroticism and stuff in his movies, not even just Challengers, but American Psycho, the book, has a lot of that too. And so I think this is a natural pairing. We've known that this American Psycho remake was in discussions, but it had never moved past that. So to now finally be, all right, it's happening. We have a director, and I think an exciting director to bring that type of a project to the table. I think this is one to watch. I mean, I think the casting's going to be really important here. You really have to figure out who's going to be. If they put Timothy Chalamet on the screen or whatever, it's okay, maybe we're not doing, maybe we're not, I don't know, maybe I'm not as excited at that point, but and that's no shade to Timothy Chalamet. I'm just saying that there's got to be a certain type of, I think, leading person in this.
Wonka becomes a serial killer.
We're looking more in the David Corenswet camp than we are the Finn Wolfhard camp. We'll put it that way.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I mean, David Corenswet. If I'm Warner Brothers, I'm no, you're not allowed to be an American Psycho until you're done with Superman. But yeah, there's. I think this is exciting. I think if you can really nail the culture of our time and the tone of our time. We talked when this was rumored. We talked about what if you made it about tech bro culture? What if you made it about toxic fandom culture? What if there's a lot of cool stuff you could explore there. So I think it's exciting. I think it's a good idea and a good vision so far.
Absolutely.
Whatever they do, they got to include some Huey Lewis in the news, or I don't want it.
Oh yeah, you got to. You guys do. What's today's Huey Lewis in the news, though?
That's a good question.
Gosh.
It's a Spotify poll.
Yeah, there you go.
Spotify poll. All right. At New York Comic Con, it was announced that Star Trek Starfleet Academy has received an early Season 2 renewal, and Tatiana Maslany is set to guest star in Season 1. Matt, be still my heart.
Just go ahead.
Just keep talking. I'm not going to pause for this one either. Tatiana Maslany in Star Trek. I'm so in. I love her. I love Star Trek. This project did not have me excited because of some of the early details we knew years ago, but these last few months we've been getting more and more little things about who's in it. It's had a really killer cast so far, and Tatiana Maslany is another one. So yeah, I'm all in on this now. I'm and the fact that it's getting a Season 2 renewal. Star Trek has been on a little rough area lately, especially with the movement of Paramount Plus sale and everything. That's put things in a creative place where we're not sure what's going to continue. and what's going to be canceled. But this is exciting. This is just really exciting. So I'm pumped. Paramount's Smile 2 took the number one spot at the box office this weekend, raking in $23 million and earning a B cinema score.
Scotty, I went to see Smile 2. I enjoyed the first Smile, and I enjoyed Smile 2. They're never going to be movies that I write home about or anything like that, but they're fun. They know what they are. They're kind of schlocky. They're high concept, or I don't know if high concept is the right word, but very specific in terms of their concept. We're going to, have this scary smile and run with it. But that being said, while the sequel does ape a lot of what the first movie does in terms of just the nature of that curse, the setting, having it be a pop star, like Naomi Scott, like credit where credit is due, like she is giving a tour de force performance with all of her, privilege and entitlement as the pop star, but as she starts to unravel, like it is palpable. Like she won't get awards for this one, unfortunately, but I do hope that this gets some eyes on her and she gets offered some media roles in the future. But yeah, it was done on a $28 million budget, and it's already made $48 million worldwide. So we're probably going to get a Smile 3 before too long.
Tiny butt. Because Haley has to enter the chat at some point. I think that the momentum that Smile 2 is getting, a lot of it that I'm seeing on social media is driven by the fact that Ray Nicholson, Jack Nicholson's son, is in the movie. And it's kind of a double-edged sword to watch the interviews with him, because they're obviously talking to him about how much he looks like his dad, especially in The Shining when they're doing the smiling. And you can tell that he's like expecting it, but also he wants to be taken seriously, as those Nepo babies always do. But
sure.
I kind of wonder if like people will latch onto that, go back and see Smile 1, and then be like all about a Smile 3.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. Okay, I'm done. I don't think I have
the rest of the lightning round is Haley's. Nobody else.
No, she's got the rest.
Everybody back off.
No.
This week, the Walt Disney Co. board began implementation of their plan to replace Bob Iger as CEO in 2026. They've appointed James Gorman as chairman of the board effective January 2nd, 2025. Gorman will be leading the search for Iger's successor.
Haley, I guess.
I thought we were letting Haley.
Yeah, we weren't kidding.
I said I was done.
It wasn't a bit. We were serious.
Oh, okay. Well, this could be rocky here at the end. It was known when Bob Iger was brought back after what's his name that they fired, because Bob Chapek was fired or let go, whatever, that he was here to be the fixer. And so I think that he probably feels like he's done that, and Disney's starting to feel like he's done that as well. And so they're ready to bring on somebody else. But the question is, who in the world would that be? Kind of, you could look inward and think logically maybe Kevin Feige would be a great CEO of the Walt Disney Company, but I don't think we want to tear him away from Marvel after all the upheaval that it's been through. I think within the divisions, for the most part, you want to keep things status quo. I'm sure people would disagree with me on some of those people, but
I wonder which one.
Shush. I think that this will be like a super intense search, and them starting on January 2nd shows that they are serious business about this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, Tiny Butt, the idea that like they tried moving Kevin Feige to help do a little bit of Star Wars and kind of open him up to do some other things, and then that's when Marvel took that dip. I think it's so funny. Like the same thing happened with Bob Chapek. As soon as he was in charge, they started seeing that dip, and it's like they're just like, get it back to where it was. Put Kevin Feige back on Marvel. Get Bob Iger back on top. Like, let's just do what we did 10 years ago. Where's Robert Downey Jr.? Where are the Russo brothers? Put them all back in their places. And let's see if it works. Sources tell Deadline that Paul King, known for directing Paddington and Wonka, will direct Disney's new Prince Charming movie, which won't be tied to Cinderella.
Jay, this is definitely their attempt to do the Ken thing from Barbie, right? I mean, like
totally.
bringing it, because it's probably Prince Charmings, right? Like you bring in multiple Prince Charmings, and I think with the right person, it could be kind of funny. And like I'm kind of thinking about that scene of all the Kens together in Barbie, and that is the vibe that I would want from a movie like this. I think like if we're gonna do it, like let's at least like make it like kind of funny and good commentary, I guess. But I don't know. It's kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
If done right.
If done right.
Your take is the best direction I could have imagined for that. Like, your take makes me interested. The idea itself did not make me interested at all. Amazon MGM Studios is developing a series based on Stephen King's 1974 novel Carrie for Prime Video. Mike Flanagan is adapting the book and will executive produce with his Intrepid Pictures partner Trevor Macy.
Haley, Mike Flanagan's going after all the biggies, isn't he? This is kind of interesting. I don't know probably listen to Bill and Ashley's Terror Theater for more informed and educated takes, but I wonder what the community response to this kind of thing is.
I'm really curious.
I did Google
I need to talk to her about that.
I did Google how many Carrie movies are there, like how many times has this been adapted? Because I was like coming up. There are 4 different adaptations of Carrie. So it's
but
it's
you
a
only
property
think of one,
right? Like that's what I mean. It's like we've thrown it at the wall multiple times, but it's just can't. I mean, maybe a series is what it needs. Like if you're really going to dive into it and try to make it a different thing, like maybe that's what it should be. And we just talked about Flanagan. It's maybe that's a good hands and a good thing to try if you really want to make it work.
Yeah, I could see them taking like a 13 Reasons Why kind of approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally see this as a series, like set in high school. Like you do that horror series set in a high school thing, and this could totally work. All right. Beef has officially cast its upcoming 2nd season at Netflix and will star Oscar Isaac, Carey Mulligan, Charles Melton, and Kaylee Spaney. The official logline for the new season states a young couple witnesses an alarming fight between their boss and his wife, triggering chess moves and favors and coercion in the elitist world of a country club and its Korean billionaire owner. Lee Sung-jin returns as creator, showrunner, and executive producer. Stephen Yeun, Ali Wong, and Jake Schreier also executive produce under A24.
Jay, we've talked about this a little bit. Like it had been confirmed that they were working on a season 2 and that it was being discussed at Netflix. And we heard early casting. At one point, Jake Gyllenhaal and Anne Hathaway were attached to star in this. And then as time went on, we started to hear other names like Kaylee Spaney, like Oscar Isaac. And that has finally become official, that these are no longer rumors, that this is the official cast. And I mean, I've been on record multiple times. I thought the first season of Beef was great. I really liked it as a limited series. I really don't like the idea of continuing the story of the characters because I felt like it left in such a good place. So the idea of kind of an anthology series, like what we've talked about, where you're starting anew, kind of like what Mr. and Mrs. Smith that we just talked about is doing, you're sticking with the same vibe and the same idea, and you've still got the same creative team and A24 and all of that. This is the same vision, but you're adapting a new story. I think that's a good move for this property.
Tom Holland will officially star alongside Matt Damon in Christopher Nolan's next film. Plot details are being kept under wraps, but sources say the setting is not in the present day. The studio has set a release date for July 17th, 2026.
Jay, you're telling me Tom Holland's going to be doing Spider-Man 4, a Nolan film, 2 Avengers films? Like, this man is going to be... he's going to be rich, but he's also going to be like exhausted, I would imagine, at the end of this journey.
He's already rich.
Now, the rumor, which we have to take with a grain of salt, about
you were telling us you were pumped to tell us this rumor.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Stop me if you've heard this before. The rumor for the plot of this movie is that it is a vampire horror movie set in the 1920s.
What?
Sound familiar?
which is so hilarious if true, because Blade, same thing. The Michael B. Jordan / Ryan Coogler film, same
Sinners.
thing. Like,
yep.
It's like everyone got the idea at the same time. They're like, well, if Mahershala is not going to do it, I guess we're going to do it. Now, again, I think you got to take that with a huge grain of salt. Like, it's zero trades have reported that. Rumors in Hollywood sometimes just get off the tracks and all of that.
Tom Holland actually leaked it now. I don't know.
So you got to keep that in mind, that like we really officially know nothing about about this Nolan film, other than that Matt Damon's in it and Tom Holland's in it, which I think is a great pairing, personally.
Yeah,
and I think really raises it.
I gotta say though, like, if this is based on like the idea of doing Blade, and then it sort of like got in the minds of some other creators, and they made this idea, it feels really funny because there's two versions that are like black directors with black actors and very black productions, and then the two whitest actors, Tom Holland and Matt Damon. I can't think of two whiter actors.
Chris Pratt, maybe.
To do that. Yeah, Chris Pratt too. All right. Universal released the first trailer for Love Hurts, an action comedy starring Ki-Hu Kwan and Ariana DeBose, and produced by David Leitch's 87 North.
Scotty, this was a fun trailer. Hopefully this one doesn't go the same way that The Fall Guy went, but I felt like it was of a similar vein in terms of being an action comedy. But I feel like whoever wrote the script for this thing or came up with the concept for it, they saw the scene from Everything Everywhere All at Once where Ki Kwan has an entire action sequence with a fanny pack. And it felt like they wanted to develop an entire film based on that concept alone, which is not a bad thing. I'm interested. I'm here for it. I'll check it out. But the one kind of negative thing, maybe the trailer was misleading me. I'm not entirely sure, but I kind of got the vibes that Ariana DeBose's character was supposed to be romantically entangled with Ki Kwan, which is, not out of the question, but felt just a little weird to me personally. But we'll see. Like I said, maybe that's just the trailer misleading me. I hope that's the case.
I didn't see that in the trailer, and I thought the trailer looked awesome. It was like she was romantically entangled with the brother, I think, and then like he helped her escape or something like that. Is what I took the trailer to be saying. But it looks great. It just looks fun and like a style of movie that I really, really love.
Yeah.
Outlander and For All Mankind co-creator Ronald D. Moore has been tapped by Sony TV and Amazon MGM Studios to write, executive produce, and showrun the God of War adaptation series in development. Ooh.
Scotty?
Haley?
You go ahead.
I love this one.
I was just going to remind listeners that Ronald Moore was the showrunner that was moved off of the series for A Court of Thorn and Roses, and he said he was going to Sony, so clearly he was going to do this. Also, cool. Outlander rules.
Yeah.
I'm glad I let you go because I was going to say I don't know a lot about Ronald D. Moore, but I don't think it was that long ago we talked about it on the show when the previous showrunner and creative team departed this God of War series. So that's just encouraging to me that this series is a priority for Sony and for Amazon. And I think definitely you look at The Last of Us and they're wanting to recreate something of that quality and that caliber. Yeah. So having just played both the 2018 God of War and I very recently beat God of War Ragnarok, those are some of the most touching, beautiful, and epic stories I've ever seen put to screen, be it movie, be it video game. So definitely one to keep an eye on, and hopefully we get some casting sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I want to jump in and say Ronald D. Moore, I love him. I think of him as one of the sort of fathers of modern television because of his work on Star Trek DS9. At the time in the 90s, no one was doing serialized television. Every show had to be like, you had to be able to jump in on that episode. There's very few serialized TV shows, and he was getting all kinds of pushback from the studio, and he was like, no, we're going to tell a serialized story. And it wasn't until Voyager came out and people started watching that, and DS9 got relegated to like the bottom rung of what Star Trek was doing, that they stopped paying attention to him and he went all out. And now DS9 is very well beloved because you can watch it now. And the last 4 seasons of that show are like this great big overarching story. And it just wasn't done at the time. Like it is from beginning to end, it is an overarching story. And particularly once he gets involved, because I think he moved from The Next Generation over to that. And so just wanted to throw out his Star Trek bona fides on top of his work in Outlander and For All Mankind, which I also love. So he's great, and so I've heard nothing but good things about God of War as a video game story from you, Jay Scotty, as well as others. And so yeah, this sounds great to me. I am on board. And that's our last story. Sorry to make it longer by hopping on for an extra butt at the end.
No, it was good stuff.
I'm the butt of the.
You've heard of the tiny
week.
butt. Now get ready for the extra butt.
All right. Well, that's the end of our show today. Thank you guys so much for joining us in the live chat. We really appreciate it. It's been great having you guys all there chatting. And if you want to join that, we do this every Tuesday night on youtube.com/strandedpanda. We were right there. There's a lot of people chatting about all the stories we're talking about. It's just a good place. I love this show because it's just a good place where we get to talk about all of the things going on in entertainment, not just the certain things we're covering on the various shows. So let's tell people where else you're doing online this week. Jay Sisson.
Weekly at Commute the Podcast like normal. Come learn a couple interesting things in about 20 minutes. We are also, we mentioned earlier in the show, we're covering The Penguin on Always Watching. So it's been a great show. It's just impressed every week. There has not been a bad episode, and it's been great discussion over there with Matt and Jay Scotty and Zoo. And so come check that out if you're catching up on The Penguin, or if you are just kind of jumping in and wanting a companion show. Come subscribe to Always Watching.
Absolutely. And Jay Scotty St. Clair.
Yeah, well, at the mention of some DC stuff and Zuhair over on Animation Deliberation, we actually got our start on that podcast talking about DC animated stuff. So we talked about Creature Commandos here. We're going to talk about it over there when that finally comes out. But currently, we are talking about Vox Machina Season 3, and Arcane Season 2 is just around the corner, so we just started talking about doing our coverage for that. So Animation Deliberation, the podcast that takes action, animation, and cartoons seriously, but not too seriously, wherever you get your podcast.
And hey, Lee Hobbs.
Brian and I did our last Secret Wars coverage for now, talking about Future Imperfect, some Hulk in there. And we don't really know quite what we're doing for the whole end of the year, but next week we'll be talking about the Star Wars Legends novel Darth Plagueis with our regular Star Wars guests, so check that out. And then on Sunday, Ashley and I did Hate Watch, and we watched the movie Tarot on Netflix, and it was terrible. And I made that joke there, and I'm making it here. It was bad. It was real bad. It was the least scary movie in the entire world. So check out twitch.tv/strandedpandatv to watch us hate on tarot.
Love it. And for me, Always Watching is going on, and I've mentioned it every week, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, Agatha is coming to its last 2 weeks. And last week, if you're enjoying the live shows, we had 80 people in the chat this week talking about Agatha. It was a great week over on youtube.com/strandedpanda. We'll be doing that tomorrow. If you're listening to this, it's today, Wednesday, when this drops, Wednesday nights, as soon as we can watch Agatha. So it drops at 8 Central. We'll be on by 9 Central normally. So check that out. And this week we're coming back with Star Trek, the Star Trek Universe podcast. It's still been running, but I'm not on all the episodes. They do a bunch of watches of old episodes that I don't get to do because I'm just too busy. But this week we got new content with Lower Decks coming back, the animated side of Star Trek, and we've got a big news episode planned. So if you don't follow that, with all the Star Trek talk this week and the Ronald D. Moore of it all, check out the Star Trek Universe podcast. So that would be great to have. I saw people in the chat talking about, Star Trek, Tatiana Maslany. Ronald D. Moore. It's good stuff. So come over there and join us for the Star Trek Universe podcast. And we'll be back with Multiverse News next week. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse.
Hey, thanks for listening to Multiverse News, or watching it, or whatever you're doing, eyeballs or ear holes, whichever thing. We do this show every week, and we appreciate you listening. Strandedpanda.com is where you can find all of our podcasts, and thank you for listening. Check us out wherever you get podcasts. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the little bell icon, whatever you have on whatever service you're doing. Rate us, like us. We're really thirsty. That's what I'm saying.